Hello citizens, this is Councillor Gian-Carlo Carra, Ward 9 TV Light. Today we're talking about the new digitization of the residential parking permit system in Calgary that Council passed on Tuesday, May 9th during the overflow of the public hearing from Monday. This was a fairly controversial thing, but not that controversial. So the people who are upset about it are extremely upset about it, and everyone else seems to be sort of taking it in stride. And then there are some people who are concerned with exactly what's going on. So what I thought I would do as, as the City Councilor for Ward 9, who has a lot of residential parking permit zones in Ward 9, as a member of the Calgary Parking Authority Board, that's one of the hats I wear as your representative on City Council, and as generally a nerd about parking, a former urban designer who's interested in smart parking, I thought I would sort of give you my overview on what's happening. So I'm going to walk backwards through that. The first thing is, you've heard me say before, and I think I'm getting quoted a lot these days in the media, saying if the next million Calgarians drive as much as the current million, we're doomed. And that's largely in response to the Green Line. And what that just acknowledges is that unless we start creating a sizable population of people who live in walkable, complete, compact, great neighborhoods that are networked by transit, if more and more people live on the edge and try and move around the city, we're going to be bankrupt, we're going to be stuck in traffic, and our quality of life as Calgarians is going to go down, both for people who aspire to live more car-free existences and those who enjoy Calgary's world-class automobile-scaled lifestyle. This is a realization that has galvanized Council to making historic investments in transit, and not only in transit, but also in the kinds of environments that we're building along every station on the line. That strategy is broadly called TOD, or Transit-Oriented Development. Now, if we are envisioning a world where every station area is a beautiful, great neighborhood, vibrant mini downtown, unless we're talking about like Hong Kong style densities, and we're certainly not over anything resembling the short term, we know that we're not going to be able to support the merchant communities that we need to be surviving and thriving in these communities to reward the people who choose to live in them. What I'm trying to say is that those merchant communities that form the backbone of these great neighborhoods, they need to be supported by a larger trade area than just the neighborhood or just people coming into the neighborhood on transit, which means that we have to draw people from the automobile-scaled city into the community to use those businesses too, which means that transit is not the only thing we have to get right. Parking is another thing we have to get right. And this is a realization that's taking place across the urban design and planning world, and how you manage parking in that way is called smart parking. And most of the conversation that's taking place around smart parking, which is district scale, transit-oriented development scale, management of parking, is taking place in the context of, in the future, we will be able to do these kinds of things because we'll have the technology. What's amazing about Calgary, starting to put my CPA, my Calgary Parking Authority board member hat on, is that we have that technology today. I was just down in Seattle at the Congress for the New Urbanism, which is a world-leading thinking group on the question of urban design. And I went to their parking session, their smart parking session. And as I do at many of these conferences, I went up to the presenters afterwards and I shook their hands and I said, "My name is Gian-Carlo Carra, I come from the future." And that was just my icebreaker, talking about how far ahead Calgary is with our amazing Park Plus technology. It takes the smart parking questions that we're starting to theorize about, and it puts it into play today. And the idea is basically that every great neighborhood needs three kinds of parking. You need immediate, teaser, convenience parking in front of the businesses, so that as you drive down the street, you're like, oh, I should stop there on my way home and get this or that or have a meal. You have to have the expectation that you can park. Parking on the street in front of businesses also creates a buffer between the street and the businesses, creates a more congenial walking environment. It's essential. But you also need, in these neighborhoods, to have parking that works for the residents. You know, the people who come to fix your house while you're out, your guests who come over for dinner, also have to be able to park, and there has to be a reasonable relationship between those two. And very often, the relationship between local businesses and local residents can be adversarial. And it's because of that that the residential parking permit system was established. The understanding that, this street is so close to that transit stop, so close to those businesses, that rather than pay meter parking in front or in the pay parking lot, I'm going to just park on your street in front of your house and walk a block. And so that's how the residential parking permit system evolved, because people were unable to really enjoy that second tier of parking, or that second type of parking that's essential for great neighborhoods. There's also a third type of parking that's essential for this great neighborhood sort of mission, and that's the idea that you need to have long stay parking, either for people who you want to come in and park their car and take transit into work in the downtown, say, and then come back and use the services in the neighborhood before getting in their car and driving out into the suburbs, or people coming in and spending time in your community, or local businesses that might not be able to draw their workforce from the neighborhood, or their workforce might not be able to get in on transit. You have to be able to park local business employees. So that long stay parking is essential too. And you have to just basically get down to the fact that if you could take every parking spot in a neighborhood and manage it holistically, you'd have a lot more opportunity than if every single individual use had to provide the maximum amount of parking it might need for its peak parking demand. And then you don't get a great neighborhood, then you get, Crowfoot Village. So the big challenge right now is how do you basically put all that together and manage parking? And that's one of the great things that the Park Plus system can do. So we established a strategic plan for the Calgary Parking Authority that basically said you have to do two things. Number one, you have to advance public policy. You have to build a great city using parking. And number two, you have to use the city of Calgary as a laboratory for smart parking. So you create these value-added products in smart parking management that you can then add on to your Park Plus program and sell to other municipalities who are starting to wake up and realize that smart parking is something that we have to do as a city. And so I'm very proud of the entrepreneurial spark that developed the best parking management tool in the world here in-house in Calgary. And council has said you have to go out and make the taxpayer money by selling this technology, this world-leading technology around the world. And so the strategic plan of the Calgary Parking Authority basically says, let's do smart parking right, let's do city building right, and let's create a beneficent sort of spiral between those two. One of the early low-hanging fruits that we identified when we passed the Calgary Parking Authority's strategic plan 2 years ago is that we said the residential parking permit system, which is a costly, unwieldy, and not a very good system in terms of achieving its ends, which is stopping people from parking in a neighborhood without the permission to do so. We can actually digitize that. And when we digitize that, we actually will see a huge benefit in terms of our ability to enforce the intent of the residential parking system. But then what we'll do is we'll start to add on a big data understanding of how parking is used on every street, how much demand is there, and if, for 8 hours a day, we know that a particular block face has 60% vacancy in the parking, well, then we can say, local businesses during that 8-hour spell, that's when you have a shift. Why don't we sell you parking permits on that street? And if you have local employees at local businesses parking a couple blocks away and walking through the neighborhood, and it's not in any way impacting the life and livelihood of people who live on that street, and if the money that we make from charging those monthly lease fees goes back into the community and starts improving the public realm, then everybody wins. And so that's basically the idea. And it took us a little bit longer to get the software package right, but the Calgary Parking Authority is bringing forward a very good product that we're testing here in Calgary to basically take our unwieldy and ineffective paper system and digitize it. And so people are concerned, and there's really sort of two levels of concern. The first level of concern is, is this going to work? And the basic answer is it's going to work, and it's going to work better than the current system in every single way. And there are a lot of frequently asked questions, and all of those questions have been answered, and I encourage you to go look at them. One example, of course, is that if a senior living in the Beltline has someone come over and they don't have a smartphone, and their person who's coming over and wants to use a visitor pass, you call in and it's after hours and they're not home, how does that work? And the way it works is that you just call in and you say, hey, my friend, this is their plate number, is having dinner with me and they need a visitor pass for this period of time. The Calgary Parking Authority will not issue a ticket for like 48 hours. And so there'll be plenty of time, even if it's after hours, to collect that voice message, make sure that that tag for those periods is not enforced, and so nobody gets a ticket. But what we're also expecting is that a lot of people who are abusing the system and slipping through the cracks are not going to slip through the cracks. So, in terms of the user experience, better in every single way, and the only difference is instead of having to go out and take a physical visitor tag and put it on a windshield and hope that it comes back at the end of the night, you just have to phone it in. So instead of walking out to your car, you just phone it in. That's the only difference, and it's pretty easy. But in every single way, it's going to work better. The other level of complaint are people who are concerned about privacy. And that's a legitimate concern. And as a member of the Calgary Parking Authority who's looking at, taking this product to different markets, especially markets in the state where there's a lot more concern about big government spying on people, we're very sensitive to those kinds of issues. And I can tell you that I believe fundamentally in the rule of law, and this is not about collecting personal information on which individuals are, visiting which houses. We have to collect a certain amount of personal information so we can enforce in a court of law. But that personal information is very much sequestered off. It's kept only for the purposes of court action if required, and then it's deleted according to the law. So our Park Plus system is 100% FOIP compliant. That's Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. We have a very good system. It's been in place, acting throughout the city for 10 years without any FOIP issues. And we will continue to treat this as a very sophisticated piece of software and make sure that our protocols and our protections and everything are fully in place. So I understand the concern that big data can be used to spy on people, and I can tell you that we're not using it for those purposes. We're using impersonal aggregate data to understand trends and better manage the service of parking, and we're using what personal data we have to collect to do the legal things we have to do as a legal enforcement agency, but the two don't meet. And we live in a land of laws, so that if there was ever some remarkable situation where maybe someone was gaming the system, there would be punishments and there would be effective court action that was paper trailed and deliberate. And I will say, from people who are concerned about privacy, what you will see now are a bunch of cars that are sitting on a street without tags that tell you that this person lives right near here, and without visitor tags that the big government actor, it becomes a threat, whereas the individual stalker is no longer a threat. These are weird trade-offs. The point I'm making is I'm very comfortable as a citizen of Canada, as a citizen of Alberta, as a citizen of the City of Calgary, and as a member of the Calgary Parking Authority, that the big data concerns are being treated in an incredibly sophisticated and thoughtful way under the rule of law. So, to wrap everything up, we are now rolling out a digitized residential parking permit system, and the people who enjoy that system in front of their houses are going to see much better service. And it's going to allow us to do other things in the future if we want to. And it's also going to be a pretty sophisticated package that we can sell to other municipalities and further benefit the taxpayer. So this is Gian-Carlo signing off for Ward 9 TV Light.